Hey everybody, welcome back to Let's Talk. My name is John, and today here on the channel, we're going to be talking about the 2006 Best Picture winner, The Departed, and its brand new Warner Brothers 4K Blu-ray that just came out. So before we get into that 4K Blu-ray review, I always like to do a film review, and that's what we're going to do right now, and this one is going to be filled with spoilers, so if you haven't seen The Departed and you want to just skip ahead to the 4K Blu-ray review, this is your warning, so skip ahead right now. So The Departed was released in 2006, and this is the movie that finally won Martin Scorsese and still his only individual Academy Award win for Best Director, which is absolutely insane. Billie Eilish actually has more Academy Award wins than Martin Scorsese. That's an absolute sin in my opinion. It also won Best Picture, and at the time when it was released in 2006, when I went and saw this movie in theaters, I didn't love it, and a lot of that has to do with the day I went and saw this movie. Me and my stepfather, we went and saw it mainly because our dog had just passed away that day, and my mom kind of just felt like, because me and my stepfather, we were the two closest ones to our dog Ranger, and we were taking it the hardest, and The Departed just had come out in theaters, and my stepdad was a big Martin Scorsese fan, so was my mom, and that's a big reason why I'm a big Martin Scorsese fan. So we were excited to see The Departed. We were going to see it anyway, but we felt like, okay, maybe should we still go? But my mom's like, no, take your mind off of everything that's going on, go see The Departed. And I think we both walked out of the theater that day just disappointed, not in the film, it's just that, we weren't really feeling the movie, and it's not a very uplifting movie at all. So, I think we just both kind of like, yeah, it was good. And I didn't watch the movie again for about 2 or 3 years. So it came out in 2006. Yeah, I didn't see it again until about 2009, I'm pretty sure. And then I absolutely fell in love with the movie. I mean, head over heels in love with the movie, to the point where it became my favorite Martin Scorsese film for a good amount of time. But now, as the years have gone on, this movie has kind of fallen down into its proper place, somewhere in the top 10 of my favorite Martin Scorsese film. My favorite Martin Scorsese film is actually Goodfellas, which is in my top 10 favorite films of all time. Martin Scorsese, though, has directed so many classics. I would say Martin Scorsese is actually my second favorite director of all time, only behind Quentin Tarantino. And, Martin Scorsese is the more acclaimed director, and rightfully so. The guy has been doing this at the top level since the 1970s. He has a classic in pretty much every decade since the 1970s. And The Departed was his big film of the 2000s. He made this movie after he made Gangs of New York and The Aviator. So this is his third film with Leonardo DiCaprio. And I really do think that this is where Martin Scorsese and Leonardo DiCaprio finally found their groove together. I really thought Leonardo DiCaprio was miscast in Gangs of New York, and in The Aviator, it was like a mixed bag. There were moments where I was like, yeah, that's the Leo we would come to know and love. But then in this movie, I think this came out the same year as Blood Diamond, and this is where Leonardo DiCaprio really took that next step to like A-list actor, and not just being, famous, because he was famous, but I'm talking about being one of the greatest actors in Hollywood. Anytime Leonardo DiCaprio picks a project to do nowadays, it's going to be good. He's not somebody who bounces around in the Marvel movies, but back in the late 90s and early 2000s, he just wasn't quite there yet. He didn't have that acting level that he has now. He didn't have that gear, but now he does. And in this movie, he is perfectly cast as William Costigan Jr. I mean, this movie is also just perfectly cast up and down the line. You get Jack Nicholson playing Frank Costello, and you can just see he's having the time of his life.
Smell a rat.
Chewing scenery in this movie. I'm surprised that Martin Scorsese didn't scale him back a little bit. He's probably like, it's Jack Nicholson. He's just having a great time. He based his character on Whitey Bulger. This entire film is actually based on the film Infernal Affairs, but Jack Nicholson's character was taking a lot from the big Boston mob criminal Whitey Bulger, to the point that there's even an extra about Whitey Bulger on both the Blu-ray and the 4K disc. But Jack Nicholson, man, he's just having a blast this movie. And this movie is just so Boston. We even get Matt Damon, who's just so famous with Boston, playing Colin Sullivan. And both Leonardo DiCaprio and Matt Damon's characters have very similar arcs, just from different sides of the law. They both are struggling with identity. They are both basically rats planted into their separate systems, being manipulated from a very young age for the jobs that they're about to do in this movie. We see this movie from the very beginning that Frank Costello basically took Matt Damon under his wing, manipulated him to the point where he was so smart that he was going to become a cop, and a very high-ranking cop at that, so that he can get all the information for him and give that information to Frank Costello, who is just manipulating everybody. And it turns out, as the movie's going on, he's not the only informant. And, just like Whitey Bulger, Jack Nicholson's character is an FBI informant himself, which really upsets Matt Damon, because you all this talk about rats, and you're a fucking rat.
You're an FBI informant? Are you fucking kidding me?
Grow up.
Just absolutely insane, and he can't move past that. So when he ends up killing Jack Nicholson's character, it is a very shocking moment, but probably well deserved, because Jack Nicholson, you know, if you're gonna do something like that and be that much of a hypocrite, you're an absolute asshole. And then you get Leonardo DiCaprio's character doing the reverse, being a plant in the mafia to try and take down Jack Nicholson's Frank Costello. And we see early in the movie how Martin Sheen and Mark Wahlberg's characters are both manipulating Matt Damon and Leonardo DiCaprio in back-to-back scenes. They say all the right things to Leonardo DiCaprio's character to get him out there and be this undercover cop, be our plant in the system, because, you know, you were faking it as a kid anyway. I bet you had a different accent on the weekends. I bet you did. You did, didn't you? You know, Mark Wahlberg knowing exactly what to do. You know, he's just overacting in this movie as well. Him and Alec Baldwin. Alec Baldwin's Boston accent. It's hysterical. I mean, there's a lot of, like, funny moments in this movie with the way they just talk to each other.
Put the fucking cameras in this place. Oh, who the fuck are you?
I'm the guy who does his job. You must be the other guy.
You know, Mark Wahlberg, he's the perfect guy if you want to cast somebody from Boston, and he's just playing that angry Boston guy so well in this movie. And then, of course, that builds up to the big conclusion. And Matt Damon is the one in this movie who I think stands out the most. When you're talking about actors' recognition for this film, I feel like a lot of people bring up Mark Wahlberg and Leonardo DiCaprio, whereas I really feel like the best performance in this movie is Matt Damon. He just plays such a slimy weasel who you're just hoping that he gets caught at some moment. At the very end of the day, you find out that he is the most selfish prick out there. He had the worst intentions of all of them, and how poor Vera Farmiga gets caught up in the middle of these two just messed up men in Leonardo DiCaprio and Matt Damon. I wouldn't blame her if she never loved again. She's probably like, fuck it, I can't do this anymore. Not after these two guys, what they did to me. Although this movie, I think, does feature my favorite sex scene in film history. I'm not a big, you know, sex scene guy. It's really got to serve a purpose for me to, like, really get into it. And I really felt like this one, the scene between Leonardo DiCaprio and Vera Farmiga with the Pink Floyd song playing underneath it, I think it works so well. And I think it really does serve a very emotional moment for the film. It really does help to guide it along. And then, of course, it just builds up to that big, surprising end where Leonardo DiCaprio gets his brains blown out of his head right as we think he's finally taken down Matt Damon's characters, when he's going to finally get his comeuppance. Nope, there was somebody else in the police division as well, and of course Matt Damon, being the asshole that he is, shoots him in the head. He's the only one left standing, and of course he has to feel like the real stand-up guy. I'm gonna recommend William Costigan Jr. for the Medal of Merit. You know, like, still doing it. Oh, what a great guy. But of course, the very end of the movie, he comes home. Who's standing there with, you know, little shoe covers, a little hat, little gloves on? Mark Wahlberg blows his brains out of the back of the head, and then we see the rat walk across the balcony there just to send the message home that this movie is about finding the rat, and Mark Wahlberg found the biggest rat of them all. And I understand that that might be beating a message over the head at the very end of that, and I can see that. You know, you don't really have to look too far in between the lines to find the message of this movie, but I really think the great thing about this movie are the characters of Leonardo DiCaprio and Matt Damon, their arcs in this film, and how they have to maneuver the worlds that they're in. And it really takes a certain person who can basically act, who can just fake being a different human being. Like, they're both liars in their own right. It's just that we're rooting for Leonardo DiCaprio and we're rooting against Matt Damon, but their performances are both fantastic. Jack Nicholson, one of my favorite actors ever, gives a great performance. Vera Farmiga is fantastic in this film, and it's just a very well directed movie. It might not be Marin Scorsese's best films, but it's definitely floating up near the top, and it's definitely one I can recommend, and maybe you want to check it out on this brand new 4K Blu-ray that we're going to talk about right now.
When I was your age, they would say we could become cops or criminals.
Well, here it is, The Departed on 4K Blu-ray, courtesy of Warner Brothers, and this is a big upgrade for me. I'll be upgrading from my previously released Blu-ray that I have right here, and one of the big upgrades is obviously HDR, where you're going to have this with HDR10. Because it's a Warner Brothers release, there is no Dolby Vision. It's also an upgrade to the audio from the LPCM track that we had on the previously released Blu-ray to a brand new DTS HD Master Audio 5.1. It's only a one-disc set. You could have got it in a beautiful steelbook. I opted to get the slipcover. Will I regret it? I'm not too sure, because I actually really do like this slipcover. It's got this like matte, flat white here, so it doesn't, you know, have the light reflect off of it. It's not glossy, but the X itself is very glossy, and if you know anything about The Departed, the X is a big symbol of death in the movie. Another thing of symbolism that works throughout this movie, that and the rats, and of course it's illustrated perfectly on here and on the steelbook. And when you come underneath, same artwork underneath, this does come with a digital code, so if you're entering into our digital code giveaway, that is available to you. Like I said, a one-disc set, which is very similar to how this previously released Blu-ray was, only one disc. There is a brand new extra on here, whereas on the previously released Blu-ray has everything else except that one extra. So everything gets ported over except for this one brand new extra, which is basically an interview with Marin Scorsese. And it's a really good interview with Marin Scorsese because he's Marin Scorsese. You know, he's just so interesting and he's such a big film lover. Of course he loved Infernal Affairs. Of course he loved the script because this guy just eats and bleeds cinema, and just hearing him talk about movies, I mean, Marin Scorsese is just one of my favorite people to listen, talk to. You know, it was like him and William Friedkin. These guys are just, you can just feel like they have a certain love for the film industry. The big difference is that William Friedkin was a little bit more of an angry guy, whereas Marin Scorsese is a much nicer and happier guy. Really, you know, a lot more lighthearted and easygoing. And I just absolutely love the interview he does on here. There's a good little mini featurette about Whitey Bulger and his influence on this film, which is pretty good. But again, that was on the previously released Blu-ray. Same thing with the deleted scenes, which do get an introduction from Marin Scorsese, but you know, there's just not too many of them. And that new extra, yes, it's good, but again, we don't get any interviews with Matt Damon, Leonardo DiCaprio, Jack Nicholson, Vera Farmiga, Alec Baldwin, Mark Wahlberg. None of them are involved in any of these extras, which is very, very, very disappointing. You know, again, this is a very popular film. This is the one Best Picture, won Martin Scorsese his Best Director's Award. I just would have liked a little bit more extras, but again, not everybody cares about the extras. So how do I feel about the visuals and audio? Well, the audio was actually a little bit of a letdown, if I'm being honest. It is an upgrade from the previous LCPM track, but that was a very, very old track, so that was a kind of a low bar to hit. But I still felt like this should have made better use of all of the channels. For a 5.1, I didn't feel like I was getting enough use of my rear speakers. That was a little bit disappointing. Yes, the dialogue does come in crisp and clear, but this is a Martin Scorsese film. We get the Dropkick Murphys popping in and out, and those big needle drops are fantastic, and they should have felt bigger while watching the movie. So the audio, it was good, it was acceptable, but it was a little bit disappointing. I felt like they could have definitely mixed this much better. I don't think they put as much effort into the audio as they did into the visuals. The HDR10 and the visuals, that is the biggest upgrade. You are going to notice that upgrade right away, especially if you go from that Blu-ray to the 4K Blu-ray. The color timing has actually been adjusted a little bit. It's much warmer than I ever remembered the movie looking, and makes the colors look much fuller as well. And that's the HDR doing its work. We're hitting those deep blacks while the colors look much more vibrant and dynamic. You know, we get close-ups on the skin, and the skin, you'll notice every single blemish now. The blues on the uniforms and the police cars all just pop off the screen. In this movie, there's a lot of blues and grays. It used to be a very cool-looking movie. Now it's a little bit warmer, but it still feels much cooler. And I'm not completely in love with the cinematography for The Departed. It's definitely not in my top 10 Martin Scorsese films when it comes from cinematography standpoint. Just doesn't work entirely for me, and that's not the 4K Blu-ray's fault, you know. So for me, this wasn't like one of those movies that blew me away, but I was very impressed with the huge upgrade to the visuals, and I can really appreciate what they did for this. They definitely made this movie look way better than it's ever looked. This is by far the best this movie's ever looked. The only thing that I'm disappointed about with this entire release is that I just feel like we could have got more extras and a little bit more of an increase in the audio. And it is a one disc set, and I know some people are going to be very disappointed that when you buy this 4K, it doesn't include the Blu-ray, because I know people just buy the 4K to get that packed in Blu-ray because they haven't upgraded to 4K, and because they didn't include the Blu-ray though, that's probably why it's actually a little bit cheaper. You know, for this to be under 25 bucks is pretty much a steal, because you are getting a pretty big visual upgrade, you're getting an audio upgrade, you're getting all the previously released extras, and the packaging is really, really, really good. So how would I score The Departed on 4K Blu-ray on a score of 1 to 10? I would give The Departed a pretty solid 8 out of 10. It's not one of the best releases of the year so far, but it is a really good release, and it's definitely one, if you're a fan of The Departed, I can highly recommend picking up. And of course, because it's a Warner Brothers release, at some point this year, it will be on sale. So if you want to wait for a sale when it's like 15 bucks, then you definitely are getting your money's worth for this 4K Blu-ray release, because I do think the audio could have been a little bit better, and I think they could have gone a little bit more heavier on the extras. But again, that's a minor complaint. I know not everyone's a big fan of the extras. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, turn notifications on, share this video, maybe become a channel member like our channel producers John Doe Juggalo, Jason Martin, and Mr. Smelly Potato, or become a channel director like Frank from Frank's Medium Reviews and get your own individual review each and every single month. But if you got no money to throw our way, guys, don't worry about it. We just appreciate you checking out this video. We hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, make sure you get out in those streets, tell your friends about us, and then we'll be seeing you around.